Please help me welcome Reverend Stephen Lane Taylor.
Good evening. It is a blessing to be speaking here tonight, and I'm honored by your presence. Thank you all for coming back so diligently. I'm going to start my talk tonight by telling you about something funny I saw on Facebook recently. Maybe funny is too strong a word. Okay, but it was amusing. It was amusing to me. What it was a photograph of a sign, and on this sign there were two statements. The first statement was one that I'm sure you are all familiar with. It is, everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. But the second statement was, sometimes the reason is you are making some really bad choices. Everything happens for a reason. Sometimes the reason is you are making some really bad choices. You know, as amusing as that is, I think it's making a point that is worth exploring tonight. You know, when someone says everything happens for a reason, it's usually in response to a challenging situation that has arisen, maybe a devastating situation, and one that probably came out of the blue and just totally unexpected. But when they say everything happens for a reason, they don't mean one of many reasons, do they? They mean everything happens for a divine reason, not a reason of human nature or behavior or science, but everything happens for a divine reason. Everything is divinely planned or divinely manipulated, divinely orchestrated. Well, is that true? Does everything happen for a divine reason? Everything? You know, I certainly think a lot of things do, maybe most things, or I wouldn't be a member of this organization and speaking here tonight. But let me give you two examples of ways I do see, definitely see, challenges appearing in someone's life by divine design. One way is sometimes a challenge will appear in your life by divine design when it's a challenge that you have chosen to experience. You've chosen it for yourself. You want that experience in your life. Now, what's divine about that if you're choosing it? Well, it's because the you I am talking about is not the little you. It's not the ego you. It's the true you. That inner divine spirit at the core of your being, that individual expression of God that you are. That you knows that sometimes if there's something you want to have, do, or be in life, or you just want to live a more fulfilling life, you may have to grow in some way. You may have to mature first. You may need to learn something, even just a skill, or you may need to heal something like a long neglected emotional wound. So what will happen is that your inner divine spirit will influence and motivate your conscious mind to make choices and decisions that will put you into a challenging situation. You'll say yes to some people, no to others, yes to some situations, no to others, and wind up with the experience that you need to grow, to mature, to heal, to learn. Here's a little example of that. Let's say you are a person who probably just through childhood conditioning never really learned how to establish healthy boundaries. And all your life you keep finding people walking all over you, using you or maybe even abusing you. Well, guess what? You're going to continually choose, kind of unconsciously into your conscious mind, people who will do that to you so that one day you can finally say, hey, enough is enough. I am worth more than that. So you can say no and reclaim your self-worth, your dignity, and your sense of power. So that's one way I see a challenge, and challenging people be in our lives through divine design, because the divine within you has chosen that to be. Another way I see challenges coming into our lives is sometimes a challenge is just a part of the divine flow that is leading you to your good. It's a part of the divine flow that is leading you to your good. Now, what do I mean by divine flow? As you've seen in my little handouts and so forth, my specialty or my focus in life and in my ministry is something I call living life in the divine flow. And I define the divine flow this way. The divine flow is an underlying current that is continually guiding you to the effortless fulfillment of your heart's desires. I'll say that again. There's an underlying current in your life, a divine flow, if you will, that is continually guiding you towards the effortless fulfillment of your heart's desires. And the way I see that process working, it's like your desires, your dreams and goals are like destinations that lie down a stream. And you want to get down that stream towards your dream. And so you're in your little rowboat headed down that stream, and the rowboat really represents your mind, your body, and you've got the oars of your free will making choices and decisions to get down the stream towards your dream. But you don't have to get there under your own power alone, because there's this current underneath that boat. There's this flow that is helping you get there, assisting you in getting there. And it does that mostly by guiding you where you need to go, by telling you what your next right step is, or your next stroke of the oars, so to speak. It guides you through your intuition. It guides you through the intuitive wisdom of other people. It guides you through divine signs and synchronicities. And your job, naturally, is to recognize and cooperate with those signs and with that guidance. And when you do, I call that rowing with the flow. But here's the thing, and here's the point I want to make tonight. That doesn't mean that if you're rowing down the stream and you're following on your guidance, you still won't row right into a challenge. Now, why is that? Well, one reason that is because that challenge is really necessary for you to continue on in your journey. That challenge may actually have you meet somebody in that situation who's necessary for the completion of your journey. Or actually, that challenge may be helping you avoid a much greater challenge which you just forge straight ahead. So really, I see some of these things that happen in life and how they turn out later as merely bends in the stream. That's what I call them. It's a bend in the stream. You didn't expect that bend. You can't see around the bend. You don't know where it's going. You're not sure that you're going to like it. And maybe at first you don't like it. But usually it quickly transforms into a blessing. If, of course, you pay attention to your intuition, your guidance, and you take the next right step you're supposed to take. Or, in some cases, don't take a step. Sometimes, a lot of times actually, not taking action is the best action you can take. Here's an example from my own life. Before I became a full-time spiritual author, I spent 30 years as an advertising writer. And in my first few years of the business, I was writing newspaper ads, and then later on it was newspaper and magazine ads, and then later on it was newspaper, magazine ads, and radio commercials. And then pretty soon I started writing television commercials. And in the last 10 years of my career, I was writing television commercials and creating them and having them produced for major clients, American Airlines, JCPenney, Subaru. But in the last couple of years of my career, I worked for a boss who just didn't like me. He just didn't like me. Now, I couldn't understand that. I am so lovable. How could that even be? It was a mystery to me. But one day, he comes into my office and says, "Steve, I don't want you to write the television commercials for Subaru anymore. I just want you to do the newspaper ads and the magazine ads." It's like, what? You want me to go back 20 years and do what I was doing when I was 25 years old? Yep, I just want you to do the newspaper ads, the magazine ads, and other people will take care of the television stuff. So I was angry and I was upset. I had been demoted. That's where I saw it. I'd been demoted by this guy for probably not a really good reason, because he just didn't like lovable me. So I thought, I'm going to do something about this. By golly, I'm going to do something. And then you know what? There was something I could do. It turned out that the president of our agency was somebody I had worked with for many, many years at another place. And we were very good friends. And I knew that if I went to him and said, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do newspaper ads, I'm going to continue writing the television commercials, and you make that happen. And I think he would have done that. But I was just about to act on that when I remembered, wait a minute, maybe I better be quiet here and consult my intuition and feelings and see what the inner divine self says do. And boy, that was clear as a bell. It said, Steve, slow down. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. Now I'm thinking, I really want to do something. But I thought, you know what, I could wait a couple weeks, couldn't I? I could wait. I don't have to do anything right now. I could just wait. So I'll wait and see what happens, the inner divine spirit. Sure, this is going to work great. Well, I couldn't believe it. Almost immediately, I began to reap the benefits of this new position. For one thing, I remembered I really liked writing those newspaper ads and magazine ads. There'd be a picture of a Subaru on a rock. You'd have to come up with 20 headlines for it. And I was just brilliant at it. It was really a lot of fun. I was getting paid a salary that was way larger than what that required. They didn't demote my salary. And it turned out, too, I didn't have to work with that boss anymore because he wanted nothing to do with that part of the business. It was really just me with my own little kingdom. But then the real benefit came. Our company had been struggling in other areas. It had lost some business, and they started to lay off people. And they came around to our department, looked around and said, okay, well, all you television writers, you're gone, but not Steve and what he's doing. That's very important to our business. So I stayed doing that with a high salary, something fun and easy for another 2 years. So, demotion or blessing? It turned out to be a blessing. But what if I had interfered with that process? You know, I consider the blessing the fact that I participated with it and I didn't act on that and didn't try to force myself to do what I thought I should be doing. But here's some questions for you. What if you continually ignore divine guidance? What if you continually ignore your intuition? What if you continually ignore the intuitive wisdom of other people or don't make them safe enough to even share what wisdom that might have sprung into their minds for you? What if you don't pay attention to divine signs and synchronicities or aren't present enough to even notice them, or you do notice them and then ignore them or overrule them because you think you know better? Don't you think that if you continually ignore divine guidance over and over and over again, that someday there might be a consequence to that? Don't you think that, you might wind up somewhere where the divine never intended you to be? Don't you think you might row your boat into the rocks or the reeds or just be up the creek, so to speak? Sometimes the challenges we experience in life may simply be the natural consequence of unguided or misguided choices. Like the sign said, everything happens for a reason. Sometimes the reason is you are making some really bad choices. And what about this? What about the ripple effect caused by other people's misguided or unguided choices? Who here was affected by the economic downturn in 2008? Was that that whole economic change and everything, was that a divine occurrence? Maybe. Or was it just greed? Was it people in the banking industry making loans to people who couldn't afford them because they knew they could get their commission and pass that loan on to another bank that didn't know the loan wasn't any good? Divine or just human greed and bad choices and bad actions? I got to thinking about the other day about that, and I realized that there's kind of a stream analogy for that as well. It's almost like you're rowing your little boat down the stream very peacefully. Everything's going nice. You're in the flow. And here comes this motorboat coming up the stream right towards you, full of will and greed and ego and power. And it just swamps your little boat, just tips it right over. Perhaps that can happen. What about this? Well, I'm still on the whole water thing. What about floods? What about tornadoes? What about earthquakes? What about a tornado that rips through a town, destroys half the town and not the other? Or to bring it down to a more personal level, what about a tornado that destroys one home and leaves the other home next door completely untouched? One family is devastated, one is saved. Was that the hand of God there? Or are natural disasters natural? The interaction of water, wind, earth, heat, and cooling, uncontrolled by any kind of divine intelligence. And finally, what about freak accidents? Freak accidents, the kind of thing where there's an oak tree that's been standing in a center of town for 150 years, and some stranger comes to town, has never been there before, is there 5 minutes, sits down on the park bench, tree falls over, right on him, kills him. I gotta admit, I've seen some stories where I think, oh man, that guy was selected for that. He was struck down, or as I'm sure many of us believe here, he chose that situation somehow to leave this planet. Was it God, though, or was it just odd? I ask again, does everything happen for a divine reason? Well, let's look at it another way for a second. If you believe that we all live and move and have our being in the consciousness of God, and that because of that, the whole idea of free will is somewhat of an illusion, then yes, Maybe everything does happen for a divine reason. Everything may be divinely planned, inspired, manipulated, or constructed. But here's the point of my talk. Yep, I'm just now getting to it. Drum roll, please. Do we really need to know why a challenge has occurred? Is that really important? You know, the name of my talk is Moving Beyond Reasons. It isn't what is the reason. It's moving beyond reasons. The way I look at it is this. No matter where you are in life, no matter what has happened or why, there's only one thing you ever need to know. And that is, everything can be a stepping stone to your higher good if you want it to be. Everything can be a stepping stone to your higher good if you see it that way and you treat it as such. To go back to my visualization of a stream, you know, you're rowing down that stream and you row right into a challenge. Well, is that challenge just a bend in the stream that'll transform into a blessing? Or is that challenge there because you have been making some really bad choices and you are not in the flow at all? Which is it? Who cares? You don't need to know. You don't need to know, because there can always be a divine flow from right where you are, no matter where you are, if you are open and receptive to divine guidance and you follow the next right step you're being divinely guided to take from there. It's like the GPS in your car, right? You could ignore that thing all day long. You cannot do any of the things it tells you to do, and what will it do? It'll just keep telling you the next turn to make. And your inner GPS, your God's positioning system, does the same thing. No matter what choices you made, no matter what's happening or why it's happening, it'll just give you the next right step to take from there to lead you to your higher good. Which leads me to one last thing I want to mention before I close. The higher good thing. You know, a higher good is always good for not only you, but for everyone, right? It can't be a higher good if someone is to their detriment. It's at least good for everybody. Sometimes you might get into a challenge, and actually the divine steps that you get to take aren't really so much about you. It's for the overall good of everyone. I'll give you an example. Years ago, there was a woman whose daughter ran into the street and got run over by a drunk driver, and she was killed. And the mother, of course, was devastated. But she became angry when she found out that the drunk driver was a repeat offender. He had done this over and over and over again. I don't know if he'd killed anybody, but he had definitely been on the road and arrested for drunk driving many, many times, and he still had his license. He was still doing it. She got so angry, she got so mad, she created what? MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And she got some laws changed in her state, and then nationally some things happened that certainly didn't eliminate the problem, but it helped. It diminished the problem somewhat. So, since something really good and big came out of that, does that mean that the event of the child being killed by the man, was that divinely orchestrated? Or maybe was that a soul contract between the two people to come to this earth and do that? Maybe. But it doesn't make any difference, does it? Everything can be a stepping stone to your higher good if you want it to be. Or, to go back to the theme I started with the sign, I like this. Everything may not happen for a divine reason. Everything may not happen for a divine reason. But with the guidance of the divine, something good can come from everything that happens. I'll say that again. Everything may not happen for a divine reason, but with the guidance of the divine, G-O-D, something good can come from everything that happens. Your job is always the same in every case, no matter what's going on or why. And that's this. Remain positive enough to see the potential for good in that situation. Be present enough to participate in the unfolding of that good by taking whatever actions you need to take that are divinely guided. And finally, be patient enough to allow that good to manifest in its own right divine time. Thank you.